Thanks for joining us in Business as we feature people, ideas and companies that move financial markets. You're in business with me, Harsha Subramaniam. This is on top of our agenda. We talk business with Ravi Uppal of JSPL. We put the spotlight in the economy with Madan Sabnavis of Care Ratings. A special conversation with Nuriel Rubini of Rubini Global Economics. But first, JSPL, the stock's down about 54% year to date, 33% down this month. Still demand scenario is looking rather bleak. There are concerns over legal tussles for the promoter of the company, but that's not deterred the company at this point in time. In fact, a Bloomberg exclusive report reveals that JSPL is in talks to acquire an iron ore mine in Liberia. To talk about that and a lot more on what the road ahead for the company looks like, Ravi Uppal, Managing Director, CEO of JSPL, now joins us on Bloomberg. Mr. Uppal, many thanks for joining us today. Let me begin by a question about the macroeconomic environment. Steel, power and mining sectors have seen quite a bit of turmoil in the past year. Would you reckon that the worst is over?
If you're talking about the steel sector, then of course, the last 6 to 12 months have been very challenging. Globally, the demand has been virtually flat. It's only China, India, and some other developing countries like Brazil and Indonesia which have contributed to the growth. And India, the steel demand grew last year by about 4%, as against 8% which we had targeted. And on the other hand, the capacity grew by nearly 7 to 8%. So we're just hoping that, in the next 3 to 6 months' time, the demand for steel should look up. There's a huge propensity for demand as far as steel is concerned.
Sure.
And there's absolutely no reason why the market should not bounce back.
What is your assessment of demand, Mr. Uppal? What kind of top-line growth are you envisaging for fiscal 14?
Well, if you're talking about the steel, the demand for steel is very closely linked to the growth of infrastructure and the economy in general. I mean, you know very well that the industrial growth and infrastructure growth in the last 2 quarters has been close to zero. It's anywhere between 0 to 1.5%. Therefore, that has not gone down well for the growth of the steel industry. But now we are seeing that many, the infrastructure projects are taking shape, and the sentiment market is gradually and cautiously going up. So, I personally have a cautiously optimistic view as far as the demand for steel is concerned. And I think that the second half of this financial year, there's a general feeling in the industry, the steel industry demand should really go up.
How do you see iron ore prices behaving, Mr. Uppal? We've seen iron ore costs come down considerably, and you've been increasing capacity. How does this affect your numbers?
This is interesting that you're saying that we're increasing the capacity. We indeed are increasing the capacity. This is a very important year for JSPL because we're increasing the capacity from 3 to 3.5 million that we had so far to double the previous capacity. We should be touching about 7.5 million tons starting from the second half of this financial year. As for prices for the commodities are concerned, including raw material and the other products of steel, the prices of the raw material have gone down considerably in the last 6 to 8 weeks' time. The iron ore prices have fallen. The prices for the coking coal, has gone down. And so is the prices of the semi-finished products and several other steel products which are there in the market. This is basically related to the general demand for steel,
right,
and vis-a-vis the capacity. What has actually happened is that the Indian producers continue to build the capacity based on the anticipated demand,
sure,
which I think should happen.
Sure.
It was widely anticipated that the total demand for steel by 2021-22 should be in the range of 130 million tons, as against 78 to 80 that we have right now, which basically translates into a compound growth rate of about 8%, which I think is very realistic for a developing economy like ours.
Right.
But unfortunately, in the last 6 to 12 months' time, demand hasn't really quite grown the way it was anticipated, but the capacity continued to come about. I think in the medium and long term, the steel industry has a great promise. I think it's only in the short term that there are concerns, but I'm rather optimistic that we're going to come out of this situation. We don't have to wait very long.
I want to talk about the power business, Mr. Uppal. We've seen the government move on the much-needed reforms in the power sector. Pass-through on imported coal has been given the green signal. Electricity boards have started restructuring. Are you confident about the long-standing issues of the sector being resolved?
As far as our power business is concerned, we are doing well. Our performance has been very steady. Of course, there has been challenges in the market. At one time we didn't have the generation capacity. Therefore, a lot of generation capacity has come about. But then we have serious transmission capacity challenges. For example, if you look at south of India, they are running short by 10 to 15,000 megawatt of power. But this kind of power is surplus in states like Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, and a couple of others. But we are not able to dispatch this power from the surplus zones into the areas which are deficit in power because we don't have transmission corridor. But that by January, the new transmission links are going to get commissioned, especially the 765 kV links, and with that we should be able to pump as much as 6 to 8,000 megawatt of power into the southern grid. Once that happens, I think the rates, the merchant rates in the market are going to improve, and also the power generators will be able to supply a lot of power to the states like Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka, which are seriously short of power. I think these are some of the teething troubles, and I call them basically growing pains. As we are sort of migrating from one level of generation transmission to the second one, this is a period of transition. I'd like to believe that by 2015 or so, a lot of the issues would get concerned when it comes to transmission.
Right.
As regards the electricity boards, if the reforms come about, I think this is the one which is most desperately needed, because that is the one which can be the bottleneck to address the issues of the power industry as such. Because today we are in a situation, the electricity boards, even if the power is available, they're not willing to buy it because they're not in a position to they pay for the power, number one, and number two, in some cases, the average tariff realization by them is still less than the cost of power.
Sure.
So there's a clear predicament for the electricity boards. That first they were saying that power was not there. Now the power is there. They're not in a position to sort of buy the power because this will simply add to their losses.
Right.
So I think fixing the health of electricity boards, if you ask me, should be the highest priority. Priority number one as far as Government of India is concerned.
Sure. So let's talk about your overseas assets. By when do you expect your mines in Indonesia and Mozambique to start delivering? And give us a sense of your plant in Oman. What's going on with that?
Well, as far as Mozambique is concerned, our mine is fully operational now. We already are making shipments of both coking coal and thermal coal to India. We're very happy about it. We have been able to commission this mine, earlier than what we had thought. As far as the Indonesian mine is concerned, we are in the process of developing that mine. We are trying to see how best that coal can be mined and can be used and blended with our other coal, because that coal has a high moisture content. But that coal has a high calorific value, but the moisture content is somewhat higher. So we are trying to work out a way how the Indonesian coal can be mined. But Mozambique coal is already in commercial production, and we are importing into India and using into multiple applications. As regards to Oman, we are in the process of setting up our steel melt shop there, and after that we will be putting up a bar and rod mill there. Happy to tell you that we are all set to commission this plant by the month of October. And so this is on track. That is going to become the largest integrated steel project in the whole of Gulf.
Sure.
And that will put us into a position of vantage.
Sure. So, government panel has recommended 50% increase in royalty for iron ore miners. As an important player in this industry, how do you view this development?
Well, there's nothing concrete which has been said. There are a lot of ideas floating around. It remains to be seen if this government, goes through with this kind of suggestion. Anything that we do by way of royalty, etc., over and above what we are paying already, is going to add to the cost of the raw material, and consequently it will also, have an impact, inevitable impact on the total cost of the product. So I think government has to be very thoughtful about this, and before they take any such action, they must try to understand the adverse impact it can have on the growth of the local steel industry. We have to remember that today the Indian steel producers are also fighting competition from imports. The Chinese have built up a huge capacity. They account for nearly 45% of the global steel capacity. So far they have been very busy meeting their own needs.
Sure.
But it's not very long in future they will start looking very aggressively into the export markets, including India. So therefore, if we continue to make the domestic producers less competitive by putting these kind of taxes and the royalty amounts, then obviously it's going to affect our competitiveness.
We've seen the rupee fall extremely sharply, Mr. Uppal. How has it affected your own decision-making capabilities?
Well, the rise of dollar against rupee was was predicted, but not to this magnitude. We know there are a whole host of reasons in U.S. They have stopped buying the bonds, and there's a general fear that the dollars are going to be short supply. So therefore, that has led to this kind of spurt in the dollar to rupee parity. I would like to believe that this is not going to last very long. Rupee, come down from the present level it has against dollar. So I must confess that this kind of sharp parity increase has come unexpectedly. But as far as we are concerned, we export and we import. So we have to see how our dollar netting takes place. In the recent months, our exports have increased substantially. We are very pleased about that. And I think now the rupee has gone from 55 to 60. I think it's going to help us to, make our export even more competitive. And we're going to put more and more thrust on the export market. So that is the beneficial part.
Sure.
The part where the rupee could have adverse impact is basically the cost of the capital equipment that we import, or some other elements like coking coal. We are increasingly looking for sources of getting coking coal within India. Although
Mr. Uppal, there are legal overhangs at this point in time on the promoters of JSPL. There's a CBI probe that's been initiated. Can you tell us can you at least allay the concerns of investors at this point in time? If it's business as usual for you?
Well, I want to tell all the investors that JSPL as a company has always acted in full compliance of laws that prevailed at any point of time. We have never, both within the company and outside, this is a company policy to go strictly by the law. That now certain questions have been raised with regard to certain issues, which we basically believe, are completely untrue. But we are not sort of going out to the media and talking about these kind of things. We are in the process of answering the questions, and I hope that we will be able to satisfy any kind of such queries which are being sort of addressed to us. So we continue to remain focused on our operational performance, and I can assure all the investors that JSPL is doing their utmost, notwithstanding a challenging market environment, that we continue to grow as we have done in the past, and we continue to bring more and more value to our investors,
sure,
like we have done in the past. So this is my assurance on behalf of my whole team of JSPL to all the investors.
Sure. We'll leave it there, Mr. Uppal. Many thanks for joining us with your perspective. Ravi Uppal from Jindal Steel and Power, and that's the stock for your year to date. Let's pull up the stock of today on JSPL and how it's trading at this point in time. That's the stock about 2% up in trade today. What's happening in the broader markets? Priyank is standing by.
When we talk about the way markets have